Rated X.
Welcome to the LaunchPad podcast.
Right you are, motherfucker!
And we are live.
I couldn't tell. I had to check my pulse, make sure I was still alive.
Yeah, still alive for the live. Man who is recently back from great state of Florida.
Oh, yeah, Florida's absolutely a great state. I'd say, if nothing else, Disney himself made it that way.
Well, you were telling me recently about how they came to acquire some of the land for Disney World.
Oh, yeah. I find that in and of itself to be just completely and utterly fascinating, to be honest with you. I went to Disney World with some awareness, but relatively blissfully ignorant, and I wanted it to be that way on purpose. I wanted there to be some surprise and some magic. So Disney World is still to this day the largest amusement park or collection of amusement parks anywhere in the world. When Disney acquired land, he had originally acquired 46 square miles of land, and Disney World to this day is still 43 square miles of land. Somewhere along the way, they decided to annex the city of Celebration from Disney property. So Celebration is no longer a part of Disney, but Celebration to this day continues to receive free electricity and free water from Disney. So whenever Disney acquired the land, he had originally gone through a variety of different third-party landholding companies so that people locally would not be aware that it was Disney trying to purchase the land, because if they did, they would have raised their prices. So this 46 miles of land that he had acquired through a series of purchases was considered to be undesirable land. It was marshland. It was considered to be land that could not be built on. So, but Disney himself is, I would say, arguably the biggest and greatest dreamer of all time. So,
You think so?
I would have to say so, because I don't personally know of any human being that imagined something and created something, essentially an entire city, out of their imagination. I mean, you're talking what he envisioned and created, and I would say to this day, maybe perhaps even surpassed the imagination of Disney himself. I mean, you're talking 43 square miles with nearly 50 miles of just underground tunnels. It is in and of itself an entire city. I mean, they do their own water treatment and sanitation. Just the transportation system. And there's many forms of transportation in Disney World. There's buses, there's air gondola rides,
Is that the monorail? Is that what they call the monorail that zips around the track?
well,
Like that little subway station almost, like the metro.
so they do have a monorail. So they have buses, they have monorail, they have air rides, like these gondolas that go like zip line up in the sky. And then they also have boats, like they'll boat you between certain properties.
How'd you guys get around?
So we transported by bus and we transported by boat. So we had stayed at Disney Fort Wilderness property. So, I have some opinions and feedback there. Overall, it was a very, very positive stay. But after going and experiencing Disney World, I personally know the one or two properties that I would choose to stay, at some point when we go back for another visit.
Can you name them?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would either stay at the Animal Kingdom Lodge, because that place is just absolutely cool as hell. Their main lodge is just unbelievable. And And the downstairs of the Animal Kingdom Lodge was really our favorite, or one of our overall most favorite restaurants we had eaten at the entire week that we were there. The Boma is the restaurant that is in the lower level of the Animal Kingdom Lodge. So, in my opinion, I think that you have one of the best restaurants in Disney property in the lodge of your hotel.
Oh, cool.
And I can say why. Boma's an amazing restaurant, but we had a better experience with Boma than any other restaurant we went to the entire time we were in Disney.
Like hands down?
Hands down. So while we were there, we were on the Disney dining plan. On the Disney dining plan, you have, there's a deluxe dining plan and there's a dining plan and so on and so forth. So we were on, I would say, what is probably the most popular dining plan for Disney. So that dining plan provides you every day, with what is considered a table service meal, a quick service meal, and then 2 snack items for the day. And that's what's included for no additional cost. Now, for the adults within your party, 21 and over, your quick service meal and your table service meal, if you want, your beverage can be an alcoholic beverage. So, a lot of restaurants we would go to, Jamie and I would make our beverage for that meal an alcoholic beverage, and then we would take free water or complimentary water with it, because, we all deserve a treat now and then. And
Amen.
And you get more for your money, really, that way.
True. I can't even imagine the price of a mixed drink at Disney.
Yeah, mixed drink, a beer, anything. It's if you're paying.
Did you see the prices?
Yeah, it just depends on where you are. I mean, there were beers that I saw that were $10 in the park. And so that's just one of the examples of when we went to eat breakfast at Boma. So Boma is the only restaurant we went to that just treated your beverage, all of your beverages are included with your meal. So for breakfast, we had, I don't remember, I'm trying to remember the exact type of juice that they had, but it wasn't an orange juice, but it was some house-made juice. It was awesome. It'll come back to me maybe, but some custom juice that they made in-house. But so for breakfast at Boma, they gave us a juice, a coffee, a mimosa, an alcoholic beverage, and a water. Boma's the only restaurant that we went to where they were just so cool about it. They were like, "Oh, you're on the dining plan, your drinks are included. Whatever drinks you want. You want a juice, you want an alcoholic drink, you want coffee with your breakfast, it's included." Whereas every other restaurant we went to would have treated it if you wanted a coffee with your meal, that's your beverage.
Yeah. You couldn't mix it up.
You couldn't mix it up. If you wanted an alcoholic, that was your drink. If you wanted a soda, that's your drink. Or juice or whatever. That's your drink for the meal.
I've been to Disney one time. I think everyone should go at least once. After that was my assessment.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because I was a sophomore in high school. It'd be different if I went now, I think.
Yeah.
Because, that was almost a decade ago now. And I remember how it was then, but knowing Disney, I can imagine a lot of things have changed. Because we never even stayed at Disney. There was a place called the Jester Park or Royal Park. It's this huge, nice hotel, and they have a bar on site, jacuzzis, a ton of whole water park, just a whole situation altogether. But it was 10 minutes from Disney. And they had this buffet for the morning, buffet for the evening, and everything like that at the hotel. So it was kind of nice, but I was curious to see how staying at Disney would be in comparison to not staying at Disney. Because I know the price would probably, I would assume, be substantial in terms of differences.
I think that you could potentially save some money off property. Disney has different scales of property, all the way from an economy route all the way up to luxury. So an example, the time that we had went, if you wanted to stay as a group at the Grand Floridian was $2,000 a night to stay there. For a blue collar man from Western Pennsylvania, that's not in my range. As far as I would say a normal person, You're hardworking American. So now this is just based on my opinion. There are, in my opinion, substantial advantages to staying on Disney property. One of the biggest advantages to staying on property versus off property, which quite frankly to me would be enough reason in and of itself to stay on property, but that's what I think, is so it all comes down to fast passes. When you want to book fast passes for rides, which that in and of itself is the whole thing, which I'll explain, but you can book your fast passes if you stay on property. You can book your fast passes exactly 60 days prior to your stay there. So 60 days prior, like you can find out the exact date and time, like the exact date at 7 a.m. that you're allowed to go into the My Disney Experience app and pre-book your fast passes. And there are reasons you'll want to pre-book your fast passes, because there are some rides, if you don't book them 60 days in advance, you will not get a fast pass for. So there's a huge advantage of staying on property versus off property, because if you stay off property, you're allowed to book your fast passes 30 days prior, but there are some rides that will just be gone by 30 days prior. So an example of that's probably the most popular ride in all of the Disney parks, which is the Flight of Passage in Pandora, which is also within the Animal Kingdom.
That's the Avatar one, right?
Yeah, that's where you link in with an avatar and fly in the back of a banshee. So
That sounds intense.
it is. And so the difference between, say, getting a fast pass to get on that ride versus not having a fast pass to get on that ride, you could be talking even outside of peak season. You're talking fast pass, maybe a 2-minute wait, up in the 2 to 10 minute range to wait to get on your ride, as opposed to like a 2-hour wait. So I could only imagine that in peak season, without a fast pass, if you go standby, you could be talking about a 3-hour wait, easy, to get on that ride. So there's a huge advantage to fast passes. But the two best properties that I would stay in, one of two, hands down. I would either stay in the Animal Kingdom Lodge, or I would stay in the Contemporary. And so the reason for that, now everybody's different. Our two favorite parks in all of Disney World were the Animal Kingdom and Epcot, actually.
We went with my grandparents, my mom, her sister, and all the kids. Me, my brother, my sister, and my 3 cousins. So when we went, they went years before, and I know, I mean, not from personal experience, but I just would imagine that Disney updates things and changes things a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when they went to Epcot, they said it was like the most boring thing that they ever experienced. So when we went, we did not even go to Epcot. And I think at the time, being in high school, something like Epcot wouldn't have been as appealing to me back then.
Sure.
Than like just trying to hit all the, big and best rides at that time.
Yep.
But now, after kind of traveling and expanding my interests, I think something like Epcot would be a lot more interesting to go through. And with hearing from you and also a few other people, they make it seem like Epcot's like one of the best things you can do out there.
I agree. So it really depends on what you're looking for. So what we appreciated the most about Epcot, for an adult, Epcot has their Food and Wine Festival. In Epcot, there's an entire gigantic portion of Epcot that is themed to world travel, really. Like, you can take a walk around Epcot and you can go from Norway to from Mexico to Norway to China. You can walk through England, European nations, France, and they style every segment, that entire portion of Epcot. They really do everything possible to make it as authentic as possible. So, if you're in Mexico, you have Mexican art stands, you have Mexican food, you have Mexicans working there. Like when we were in Norway, there were people working there that were Norwegian. I mean, You know,
They try to keep it from being like Walmart, huh?
they keep it I think as authentic as possible. You know, the one thing that Disney World is just incredible at is like you can walk into a place or somewhere and you just instantaneously become like in a different world. So, like an example of that is in Epcot, we saw there's this, when you pass by Mexico, there's this pyramid, you know, you see from the outside, and it looks cool, it looks awesome. Well, when you walk into it, you would never think that the inside of this place is as big and as elaborate as it is. Like you walk into this pyramid and it actually goes down way bigger inside than you would probably ever imagine, even from looking at it outside. You know, you go in and it's just you are instantaneously in a different world. Like if you're in Hollywood Studios and you go into the Galaxy Edge portion of the park, it's like you're in Star Wars. You know, you're living. You instantaneously just become in a different planet. I mean, it's not. So that's what they are amazing at. I would say Epcot, if you take any interest in international culture, food, world travel, wine, whatever, then Epcot's the place for you. And they're not shy of having some pretty cool rides within Epcot. I mean, I don't know that you're going to get some of like your biggest thrillers necessarily in Epcot, but over in Norway, even from a family-friendly perspective, over in Norway, they have the Frozen ride, and that ride even impressed me as an adult. So
Oh shit!
it did, man. So that was for our family, truly was what felt like a magical experience. That was literally our first real impression of Disney World. When we arrived in Disney World, the very first park we ended up going to was in Epcot. So when we arrived at our lodge, there was an item that was supposed to be delivered for my parents that didn't arrive on time. So that made us late. And so we had originally missed our first two scheduled fast passes of the day, but then some of the cast members there were just really awesome. They were like, oh, well, here, to make up for that, here's 2 fast passes with no time restrictions, and you can use the, well, I'll get into the whole tiering rides, because you have your tier 1 rides, and then you have your tier 2 rides. So basically, you know, if they throw you a couple of time restrictionless fast passes, you can use on virtually any ride, but you can't use it for like a Flight of Passage for like Avatar. There's a couple rides.
Oh, okay. So that's like some of the newer, better ones in Tier 1 where vouchers would be restricted?
Yeah, like even a voucher would be restricted from their absolute most popular rides.
Okay.
So.
But at least they gave you something for it, though.
Oh, yeah. So, in fact, we got to go back and it wasn't, the rides that we missed weren't considered a Tier 1. In fact, the Tier 1 ride in Epcot was the Frozen ride. So we got everything taken care of. So our first experience in Disney World was literally going to Epcot, walking over to Norway, and then getting on this Frozen ride. And even some of the animations and what you see in that ride are just so surreal, better than lifelike. I mean, if you can imagine taking like an animated character or cartoon character like out of the screen and putting them into the real world, but they're still kind of like, I don't know how to explain it, like illuminated or animated in a way that's like
They break
surreal.
the fourth wall, but you still know it's animated?
Yeah,
it's not total virtual reality?
It's like more than 3D.
Okay.
You know, it's like, in my opinion, it's like beyond 3D. So, it literally looks like they like ripped Elsa out of the screen and like put her into the real world. Any newer ride at Disney, like their animations, their special effects are just on a whole other level of anything I've ever experienced in my life prior to going to Disney World. And so my daughter Ari is wearing her Anna dress, and she knows that we're going into the Frozen ride, and she turns and sees Elsa, and Ari turns to Jamie and she asks her, "Is she real?" And Jamie, playing into the whole magic of it all, was like, "Yes, she's real." And Ari just immediately started screaming like, "Elsa," like waving to her, and then like Aria literally broke down into tears on this ride. just crying because she saw, to her, she saw a Disney princess in real life.
Yeah.
So she is just in tears, and then she turns and looks, and because Arya's in tears, Jamie is now in tears, and it was just, I mean,
It was a magical Disney moment. Huh?
it was a magical Disney moment. I can be, I hope that I'm not, but like someday if I'm old and I'm just falling apart and I'm losing my mind, I believe that is a memory that is ingrained so deeply into my mind that it will live in me forever. Yeah. I don't think even in my most illogical moment in life that memory wouldn't be there.
Well, if you're ever concerned, just listen back to this.
That's true.
Record keeping,
The Animal Kingdom Lodge is like super close to the Animal Kingdom, which is probably our overall most favorite park. And they have some killer thrill rides. I mean,
so you like the Animal Kingdom better than Magical Kingdom?
Overall, me personally, I would have to say yes. But you cannot go to Disney World without going to the Magic Kingdom. Like, what the Magic Kingdom I think is incredible for is the castle, parades, the happily ever after fireworks. I think that's the absolute just most incredible part of the Magic Kingdom. The Magic Kingdom is very, very, family oriented. Like their rides are not thrill rides. They're, they're fun
for younger
rides.
Kids. Yeah.
Yeah, they're fun rides for like the whole family.
Don't they have like little Alice in Wonderland teacups down there or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, like stuff like that. Okay.
So like their most popular rides, like the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train or, Big Thunder Mountain, for example. Like that's going to be like a thrill ride for a little kid, but it's not an adult thrill ride. It could be fun. It could be fun,
The Mine Train, that's the one you had the picture on, right? Where you were like...
yeah. Like,
your face on that was like you were just fucking screaming for your life, man. Like, it cracked me up. We should get a picture of that and slap it up on here. So that way if people listen to this, they can see your face.
I release all digital rights. Any digital rights I have, I release to feature that.
It's a classic photo. Like it's one for the scrapbook.
So the other reason, I didn't get into this too much, but the reason that I would choose the Contemporary Resort as another alternative to stay is the Disney monorail runs right into the lobby of the Contemporary. The Contemporary is, so the Animal Kingdom Lodge is extremely close to the Animal Kingdom. The Contemporary is extremely close to the Magic Kingdom. And in fact, the monorail runs into the main lobby of the resort. So that would be why I would choose the Contemporary, especially if you're really all about the Magic Kingdom. But it doesn't just have to be the Magic Kingdom because the monorail can connect you off to other places. So
just more convenient travel?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no other property on site that I'm aware of that the monorail runs into the lobby of your hotel. Like you can probably take the elevator down and get onto the monorail.
Oh, sweet.
So the if you want to stay at the Animal Kingdom Lodge, I'd just say you'd want to book that way in advance because we had booked our stay months and months in advance, and but even our stay months in advance, the Animal Kingdom Lodge was practically booked out. So, my advice is like if you want to stay in the Animal Kingdom Lodge or you want to stay in the Contemporary, like book it way in advance.
Like a year ahead of time, or how much of a time frame do you think you'd need?
I would say so that's probably going to depend on if you're booking in peak season or out of peak season. I would say, honestly, if you're going to do anything for Disney, you probably, in reality, you should probably be booking your, at least your resort and your package. You should probably book that stuff 9 to 12 months in advance at least. I don't know that doing it over 12 months in advance is required, but this was kind of a learning experience too, big time for me me and Jamie, because we're real, like, go with the flow. You know, when we travel, we don't have too much of an itinerary, and where that's not possible really in Disney World.
Yeah.
It's not. And so I know, or I knew that you could go to Disney World, and Disney World could be one of the most magical experiences you would probably ever have in your whole life, or it could be probably one of the most stressful, absolutely awful experiences. You put so much financially and planning wise into going to Disney World. So to me, there's no reason, absolutely no reason to go to Disney World and have a miserable time. But you see it when you walk around. You know, you'll see families that are just having an amazing time, but you will absolutely see families where just somebody is just having a meltdown, you know. So, you know, when
Well,
you
don't
go,
you think that because it's so expensive in comparison to a lot of things a family can do and takes so much time and stress to plan for, do you think that's exclusively why? That there's so much pressure going into the trip that we have to have a good time that sometimes it can just crumble?
yeah, you know, people put a lot of time and effort and planning and money into it, so they really want the experience to be magical. You know, it's almost like they set the bar, the expectations so high. I think the balanced approach to Disney World is the absolute best. So you should be open, some loose idea of a little bit of what you want to do, and I would say primarily early in the day, but leave your evenings open. So I would say the biggest tips that I learned and that I would recommend. So when you book your fast passes,
And you said fast pass is like a must down there, right?
yeah, especially for some ride. The way that Disney works is you can schedule fast passes a day. And now when you schedule them for that day through the My Disney Experience app, the 3 fast passes have to be scheduled in the same park. You can't like schedule 2 in one park and 1 in another. It doesn't work that way. You have to schedule your 3 fast passes in the same park for the day. Now, once you use up your 3 fast passes, you can continue to just see what rides have fast pass opportunities, and you can do 1 fast pass at a time the rest of the day. So the smartest thing that a person can do is book their 3 fast passes really relatively early in the day. I mean, you don't want to pressure yourself to have to rush to get to the park or rush your breakfast, but you want to give thought to that, because in reality you're going to have long days, you're going to be walking a lot. So I mean, you're not going to want to be getting up at 6 a.m., you know, to make sure that you're making breakfast times.
Yeah.
So here is my reasoning for staying in the Animal Kingdom Lodge is like, you wake up every day, or at least most days, you go down in the morning and you have breakfast at Boma, you know, and now if you get the Boma coma, you know, if you get a food coma there, that's on you. You know, you have opportunities to make responsible choices. So, but if you go in and give yourself a food coma to start the day, that's legitimately, that's what they call it, the Boma coma.
Boma coma.
I didn't really experience that. Jamie said she did a little bit. I didn't, you know, but we were just eating, you know, whatever vegetarian or vegan options they had on the buffet. That's what we were going with. So
How much trouble did you have finding a proper dish?
with table service or quick service, really not at all. I mean,
Lots of vegan options?
it depends on the restaurant in terms of whether there's a lot, but they always have
Something you can get?
yeah, pretty much any quick service, table service restaurant, they provide, you know, options. So, and they're really clearly labeled. I mean, like, you're going to have like a little symbol by the dishes that are, and if you don't know, you literally could just ask the staff and they'll tell you. But, you know, for us, it's not an allergy, it's a preference. But the thing with Disney that is pretty awesome is, like, if you legitimately have a food allergy and you schedule your meal in advance, you can actually indicate whether you have a food allergy or not. Say you schedule a breakfast or a dinner reservation or whatever. You can schedule your reservation in advance, And if you indicate that you have a food allergy, they will accommodate it. I mean, so much so that, like, not even, they make sure that there's not even cross contamination that would impact, they take it very seriously. They stamp, like, if you come in with something marked as an allergy, all the staff know. But yeah, but it's pretty cool that way. So for us, I would say, it's like, what I would do differently the next go around is I would make a lot of my dining reservations, like for breakfast, maybe not every day, but I would make a lot of days for breakfast, to just wake up, have breakfast, and then go start your day. Because if you do the reverse, say you make a dinner reservation. Now, there's a couple places I would recommend a dinner reservation for. But if you do a dinner reservation, now you're giving yourself that pressure.
You have to be there at a certain time.
Yeah, we got to be here by this time.
4 o'clock, or else we're going to miss out.
Yep. So that ends up altering your plans for anything else that you're going to try to do that day. Now, a couple places that you kind of almost have to book a dinner reservation for if you want to go there. So one of the ones that I thought was the coolest was the Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater, which is in Hollywood Studios. It basically it creates the effect of being like at a drive-in movies. So like all of your tables are these like classic cars, and they're all lit up, and they make the sky like it has stars sparkling in the sky, and they have like a movie reel playing up in the front with just short clips of like old, black and white classic films. And so it's just basically like you're back in a 1950s, 1960s sci-fi movie drive-in theater, So
I would love to go to that.
Now, this made for a really late night, but I want to say Hollywood Studios, I think like the park closes at like 9 o'clock. I feel like our reservation at that dine-in theater was like 8:55 p.m., 9:10, something like that. Our reservation time was really like right at park closing. So we went in and had our dinner, and it made for a late night. But when we left the Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater, the park was basically cleared out. So when we were walking to leave the park, we were walking through Sunset Boulevard, really in reality, like by ourselves. And that in and of itself is just a cool experience, because you're not going to go really anywhere in Disney World and just be by yourself.
Oh, hell no.
That'd be my suggestion, is if you're willing to kind of have a later night, if you're going to book a dinner, and that makes it kind of cool because you don't give yourself a ton of pressure,
Yeah, because it's right at the end.
It's right at the end.
Yeah.
So,
what do you think was the most overrated aspect of Disney that you think that you might have wasted time on, that you don't think would have been worth it?
So, I mean, rides that we wouldn't do again, I wouldn't. I know people are nuts about it, but we wouldn't ride Big Thunder Mountain. We wouldn't ride the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. Like, we just wouldn't take those rides again.
Was it just because of the ride itself, or a long wait time, or just a combination of things?
To me, it's the ride itself. But, if you got a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, then that's probably a ride you want to take them on. But if you're 2 grown adults, screw that. Don't take those rides. I mean, but, unless you have some deep, close, passionate connection with the Seven Dwarfs in your heart, then I would pass. Splash Mountain, even for an adult, is pretty cool.
I always liked the Haunted Mansion. Did you go on that one?
I thought the Haunted Mansion was cool. And my dad, I think Walt Disney World opened up in 1971, and my dad went in like 1979. And that was the last time he had gone. So I feel like, even the perspective for him had to be really cool, because he went to Disney World like 40 years ago. And so you can imagine 40 years of evolution that happened. And he talked to me about, even the differences from when he went to now. And I guess what I was getting at was, so for the Haunted Mansion, that ride was around 40 years ago. So I find that to be nostalgic. So of everything, ride-wise that we did in the Magic Kingdom, what I enjoyed the most was the Haunted Mansion and Splash Mountain were the 2 rides that we enjoyed the most. But yeah, the Haunted Mansion, the holograms or whatever for the ghost, or Maybe they're not holograms. Maybe they're just some spirits that have been floating around Disney World for 40 years. But
All the kids that died on roller coaster rides.
yeah,
Because that's another dark part about Disney, and I'm sure you're aware of this too, is just over the years how many people have been in and out, how many injuries on rides and deaths on rides that they've actually had to comp people for and fork out millions and millions of dollars because people have got hurt on the rides and things like that.
so I did miss that. So along those lines, I would be totally ignorant to not acknowledge Space Mountain as just like probably the best thrill ride in the Magic Kingdom. I know of accidents. I don't know how many people there have been, but here's what I will say. This is a pro tip if you're going to go to Disney World. Space Mountain in particular, it tells you, keep your arms in the ride. But I don't know that it goes like out of its way to emphasize that you should keep your arms in the ride. And
Oh, it doesn't.
it does not. That was my impression. It does not. And I didn't test it out, so I can't speak from experience, but I feel like I have some decently long arms, for a normal. I mean, I'm not Shaquille O'Neal. I'm not 7 foot tall. I'm a 6 foot tall man, some reasonably long arms. I truly believe that if you extend your arms, I feel like if you don't take their advice and you stick your arms out on Space Mountain, somewhere along the way, you may be, losing an arm or fracturing a forearm or something.
Well, you said you didn't have firsthand experience at this. I did. When we went to Disney and we went to Space Mountain, you just see the traditional, hey, keep your arms in the vehicle, but every fucking ride says that. Clearly, because they just do it to cover their ass.
Yeah.
But there was no emphasis on, hey, you might lose a limb, like for real this time. So as soon as that ride takes off, it just immediately, as soon as it starts, you're zipping. There's no little short climb to the first hill or anything. It just bolts as soon as you get strapped in. So I had my hands up when I went on that ride. And one of the hills, it comes up, and it's all dark. It's all indoor coaster. I can barely see 2 feet in front of my face. And we come off this ridge, my hands are in the air, and I just see how low this clearance is that we're coming in. And I'm like, because some rides can be deceptive where it looks like you're going to run into another coaster or you're going to, hit a high end or anything. It wasn't like this. It was literally I was going to get my fucking arm knocked off. So I just snuck it back down. And since then, man, I honestly haven't really stuck my hands out too much on any coasters. I've taken their advice. I don't want to lose a limb over it.
I would say if the roller coaster says to keep your arms in, it's probably worth taking the advice. But most rides say it where it's not even necessary. Yeah, this ride, I believe it's actually necessary. I read, too, about a guy who took a ride on Space Mountain, a guy that had died on Space Mountain. Now, this has to be on this guy but I don't know who would ever think to do this, but there was a guy who was riding Space Mountain and decided to jump off of the coaster mid-ride. So they had to close the ride for 2 days after this happened. I heard that and I was just like, obviously they must not have been in their right mind. Who would even attempt to jump off of Space Mountain mid-ride?
Of all the places just to end it all, like why mid-ride would you just decide to unhook the belt and just take a leap off Space Mountain? I guess one will never know.
We will never know. And I must say that, if somebody's never done a psychedelic, then Space Mountain may be the closest you'll ever get that person to that. So
That's awesome. So, are there any other comments you want to make?
on Disney World,
Yeah.
their water parks are only open until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, so I would keep that in mind. There will be no doing the amusement park during the day and coming back to the water parks at night. We went to Disney World and stayed for a week. So we went to every single amusement park. A couple of the amusement parks we went to twice. Like we went to the Animal Kingdom twice. We went to the Magic Kingdom on 2 separate days. We never made it to their water park. So I would go back again. A few different reasons, but among them, I would go back solely to take some time in their water parks. I think their water parks actually look amazing.
Oh, they are. Blizzard Beach, do they still have that one?
Yeah.
Blizzard Beach. I went there. The most crazy water slides, dude. Like, I know your kids are still kind of young, but like if they get to the point where they want to like do some kind of big slides and stuff,
Yeah.
you almost want to be careful on the ones at Blizzard Beach. They're that big. Because I was 16 going down those, man, and they were just so steep and so rough. Because they got these, big blocks for the slide that is like welded together and put together. But there's like these little ridges for these pieces where they're attached. So when you're flying down this ride, like 40 miles an hour, you're just hitting these little ridges of where the pieces are mended together. And it's actually like kind of scratching your back up a little bit. So it was a little uncomfortable, like some of the slides. But there was another water park they had that was real awesome too. We actually liked it more than Blizzard Beach. Typhoon Lagoon. Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to tell the story. Well, like I said before, we were on a family vacation. And at the time, my youngest cousin, Caitlin, she was 4 years old, like real small. We went to Typhoon Lagoon, and they have the huge main pool, but it's a wave pool. And we didn't know that it was like making waves on the huge waves that you could surf on down at the far end of the pool. She's all excited, so she just runs into the pool. All of a sudden, we hear these big waves kicking up. We turn and look. There is literally like a huge, like tsunami level wave approaching. And there's little 4-year-olds out there. And there's just no way she's going to be standing upright if this thing crashes upon her. So we're just like swimming after. We're just like trying to get to her real quick. And we do. I mean, she didn't go far. She didn't know how to swim or nothing. But it was just because she kept trying to go out further and further and further. And her older brother at the time, he was only, I think, like 8 or 9. So he couldn't help her too much. So, yeah, but that park was so fun, man. They had the tube rides where you could just sit and go tubing down these huge, huge tracks and huge courses. That type of stuff, like the tubing, is good for young kids, older people, any age, really. And it's a good way just to chill out and not have some 40-mile-an-hour slide to worry about. It's a lot more relaxed. If you didn't get to go to the water park, that'd definitely be something that you'd want to do again.
Yeah, we would definitely go back just for that. And I'd probably leave it on this too. Just add this last tidbit. Our 2 favorite rides in any of the parks that we went to was, so Flight of Avatar is really like, no surprise there. It's such a popular ride, but Expedition Everest was also in our top 2 favorite rides. I mean, I can't think of another ride that we took that I enjoyed as much. So, and there's a little bit of a twist in that ride, so I'll leave it at that.
All right.
Oh, and you can take I didn't mention this. You could take an air ride, a gondola air ride, straight from Hollywood Studios to Epcot. Just so you know, you can gondola ride the whole way from the one park to the other. I would also go back for that. We never did it, but I know that you can do it.
You didn't do the air ride?
No, between those two parks.
That's the zip line you said.
Yeah, it's like it would remind me of going up like a ski lift, except for it's not open seated. It's like you're in an enclosed gondola.
Okay.
So yeah, but the gondola air ride goes between a few places, some of the resorts and whatnot, but you can actually air ride straight from Hollywood Studios to Epcot. So that's also something that I would keep in mind. I would not have forgiven myself if I didn't mention that before you go. So
awesome.
This is